go through some ongoing conversation with our public. So this is not a one-stop conversation today. We as employees have been having the conversation in collaboration with Interwill, and certainly today's a chance for us to learn from the board about priorities. But the conversation will continue with our community well into the future, and so we are planning to have focus group conversations, small group conversations, large group conversations, because at the end of the day, this is a community's strategic plan driven by what values we feel are most important. So there was a lot of work done in 2013. You have a copy of that at your spot. And so there's a lot of strength in that work. That was a community process, much like we are going to work through in the coming months. There's a mission, there's a vision, there are strategic objectives that are certainly strong, but a lot has changed in our community since 2013. And so we know that the world is a lot different now than it was then, and so ultimately there's a very strong foundation for us, but it's an opportunity for us to reflect on that work and determine ultimately where we go in the next several years. So,
Dr. Ray,
yes, sir.
Just for clarification, what we're doing today is setting a vision for, say, the next 20 years, but within the next 5, steering the ship. Kind of, can you clarify like the timeline?
Yeah, so timeline, really a strategic plan is more of a 5 or 6 year document. So it's more of a short-term vision, but ultimately we need to think about, where our community wants to go long-term, but really this plan is going to guide us for the next 5 years. And so at the end of the day, we'll have a mission, a vision, core values, and strategic objectives that are measurable, that ultimately will guide the work, and we can report on to our community and reflect on how we're making progress towards this.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can I make one comment?
Please.
I think it's worth saying, if you're doing your math, 2013 and 5 does not equal 2026. So I think it's important to say that this has not been something that has been forgotten or not a priority for the board. If you look at the administrative changes we've had over the last 6 years, if you look at, we've had an election in between then, so there's been a lot of start stops for this. So this is something that is extremely important to us,
Yeah.
and it was important to us that we got it right with the right leadership team. So we got to this point because we feel like we've got the right team in place to help drive in the execution of whatever strategic vision we come up with.
So share freely, conversation. This is just a free flow of dialogue. Tom is going to lead us through some conversation, but at the end of the day, really want to make sure that this is reflective of your voice and your thoughts. And so this will be a facilitated conversation, but let's just chat as things come to our minds. So thankful for the hospitality of Luck and the work that Tom has done so far and will continue to do for us, and just grateful for your leadership, and turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you,
Yep.
Jeremy. I really appreciate it. So maybe before we jump in, I would love to do just some quick introductions. We can just go around the table and just introduce maybe a little bit about, what's your name, and then how long you've lived in Goochland. So we're going to kick it off over here.
John Falau, 36 years.
Thank you, John.
Neil Spoonhauer, lived in Sandy Hook for 24 years.
Neil, thank you.
Charlie Maunders, been 13 years.
Jonathan Christie, 15, 16 years.
Tom Westry, 19 years.
Oh, Elizabeth McDonald. I do not live in the county, but I've been working with the county for almost a year now.
Jeremy Rayleigh, lived here for 10 years now.
Tara McGee, the county attorney. I've been county attorney almost 10 years.
Tara. So I'm Tom Epperson. I am president of Interwill. Just as a quick introduction, Interwill is part of Luck Companies, so Luck Companies Philanthropy. Basically, we're a 501c3. And all that means for us is we go out in the world, we work with for-profit companies. Any money we make there, we come back and then use it to do reduced rate or free work for nonprofits. And so this work that we're doing on behalf of the county is really about our partnership between Luck and Interwill and Goochland. And as you guys know, Luck, we're incredibly committed to making a difference wherever we go, in any community we operate in, and especially here in Houston, since we've been here for so long and have a long history here. Really quick safety briefing. So as you guys may know, we have a real live working rock quarry about 200 yards that way. And so we're not planning on anything operationally today, but if anything should go on or we have a fire alarm or something like that, we've got an exit behind me, exits over here, exits back there. Basically this whole building is filled with exits. So if something should happen, if you would, go to the exit and then we'll gather out front here closer to 6. We've got AD machine as well as first aid kit in our little kitchenette area back there. Anybody first aid certified? All right, a couple of hands in the back. That's fantastic. So we should be okay. While you guys are here with us, if you have any needs whatsoever, do not hesitate to ask. We are here to support you, and we're here at your service. So, with that said, just a really quick, brief overview of the strategic planning process. So, whenever you're doing strategic planning, the outcome is to have a game plan for the next 3 to 5 years. Jeremy talked a little bit about over the next 5 years or so, the strategic plan should help us make decisions. It should help set goals for us. It should help us figure out what our major projects and tactics are going to be going forward. It's about getting everybody on the same page and aligned with where we're going. Part of the process, though, really matters because you could have a plan, stick it on a shelf, and then never pay attention to it again. And so the process is about trying to get as much alignment, buy-in, and ownership of county leadership as possible, both within our board as well as within our leadership in the county. Get everybody on the same page, give them a lot of clarity, and then get them moving together. And so part of this process is about making sure that the public has a loud voice and has a lot of input, making sure that we hear from you, you're guiding the strategy at a high level, and then for Jeremy and his leadership team to really weigh in and figure out the brass tacks of how to make our goal and vision reality. So, anything that you'd add to that?
No, perfect.
And so, really basic steps in any kind of strategic planning process, right? First of all, you have to have a why, a compelling reason to go through strategic planning at all. Right? And our why is really about how do we align resources, how do we align decisions, how do we pick the biggest priorities, how do we get everybody on the same page. We want to make sure the right people are in the room, and so as part of this process, not only do we have a few of these events with the board, we've also got the county meeting on a regular basis, Jeremy and his leadership team, and then many public events to hear sort of the public's point of view and get their input. We're going to need the right data to support us, right? So we're going to be collecting data along the way to help inform the strategic plan, everything from how do the employees feel inside the county to data on how the county's doing from a fiscal perspective, et cetera. We're going to do something this morning called a SWOT analysis. You guys have probably been through SWOTs many times. But all a SWOT is a current state snapshot of how the county's doing. And we'll talk about what are the strengths of the county, what's going awesome. We'll talk about some of the weaknesses or areas where we could have potentially improved in the future. We'll talk about opportunities to make a positive difference in the lives of our citizens. And then we'll talk about threats, so those things that exist that might take away from the quality of life of the folks that we lead. So that is our work today, is to do that SWOT. And then as we go through, we'll take all of this data, all of this input, and we'll begin to sort of bucket those findings and themes into these big strategic objectives. So big things we want to do in the future as county. And then we'll come up with a mission, vision, and values that support where we're going. Right? So what do we want the culture of the county to be? And then ultimately come up with a game plan and a budget that really supports where we feel like we're going. So our work today is mostly about this current state snapshot of our work. And so you're going to hear a lot of terms as we go through it, especially in the future. When we talk about mission, we're really talking about why. So why do we come together as a county? Our vision will be what we want to accomplish together, so that big, hairy, audacious goal that we've got. Our values are really the shared beliefs and assumptions that will really underpin the culture of the county's administration. Our strategic objectives would be those big buckets that we want to accomplish. The major projects will then support those strategic objectives and ultimately support that vision. So that is our work. And whatever we do, we want to make sure that really clearly hangs together. We want this plan to make sense. We want it to be logical. We want to get everybody on the same page pulling this information. And then we want to make sure that we've got the right data to support it. And that brings us to today. So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be taking a bunch of notes and asking you a bunch of questions. We're going to kick things off with what's awesome about this county, and what do you love, and what do you want to hang on to. We'll talk about potential weaknesses in the county, and just keep in mind, there's no perfect people, there's no perfect organizations, there's no perfect counties. We'll talk about opportunities, so what are some fundamental ways we can make a difference in the lives of our citizens. And then threats, what's out there that can potentially degrade the quality of life for our citizens. Because Jeremy and his team will need to develop a plan that helps us leverage what's awesome about the county, our strengths, develop a plan that potentially addresses some of the weaknesses, a plan that takes advantage of these opportunities, and a plan that protects against some of these threats. So any questions or thoughts before we jump in?
Oh, and then ultimately, a plan that will be adopted and approved by the board. So what we'll do together will end up in a document sometime that ultimately will be presented to the board for their consideration. So certainly, the board will have their stamp of approval on the final document whenever that may be.
So any questions or observations before we jump in? All right. Well, let's kick things off, and I'll just be taking notes as we go. So let's talk about what's awesome about the county. What do you feel like the county's strengths are?
Small size. You know, administrative. Everyone knows everyone else for the most part. Creates that cohesiveness.
I'd say the engaged citizens.
I'd say a current financial position. Maybe underline current.
Yeah. Tom, your screen is not doing you any help. It's clicking on and up dark pretty regularly.
Blinking.
We'll keep it going. Hopefully it doesn't cause a problem for anyone.
Best schools,
Yeah.
really the best fire,
Public safety.
police, public safety.
I would expand on that, and I really think that all of our people, no matter what the level, they care. Like, they're not in this to collect a paycheck.
See the beauty and rural nature.
Mhm.
We all seem to be on the same wavelength to protect, no matter what.
I'd say diversification for our size. 'Cause from districts 1 to 5, we have very different considerations, and most small counties are more homogeneous.
Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like? Like, are we talking like business, people, nature? What is
Socioeconomically, demographically,
Infrastructure.
infrastructure. Yep.
I think I want to pile on the engaged citizens piece because there's engaged from helping set policy, but also from a willingness to contribute. So I think there's more, arguably as much if not more people volunteering on committees and different things than we actually have full-time paid staff, non-public safety. So the citizens are very, hey, if government doesn't think it's the thing to do, AKA Goochland Day, citizens step up and do it. And I think that's what keeps our county just amazing.
All of this is a culture here. And exactly what you're talking about brings to my mind. sense of pride, belonging, as I said, for protecting it. Even though we're right up against, metropolitan or, high density urban areas, we're sort of protected from that, or we're removed from it a little bit.
I would also say this is a very generous county. If you look at Goochland Cares and Pet Lovers and all of the things that people contribute to not just making the county better, but by helping their neighbors, I don't think you find that everywhere. I think that's unique to you.
So we're historic and patriotic. I'd say we have a do more with less philosophy.
How does that do more with less philosophy? Like how does that help the county?
The creation of unique solutions.
I think it kind of also goes back to that pride belonging. There's a sense of ownership. If I think about the citizens that help with the trails at Leaks Mill Park, they're wildly engaged and passionate about what they do. So they feel like they don't just feel like, but they do contribute to our community.
Let's go back to that financial strength. Put the AAA bond rating, did we mention that?
Didn't I?
And I think that's something we all want to protect, need to protect. It's one of the elements that makes this county strong.
Gives us flexibility.
Right. It gives it a lot of flexibility, exactly. If we go to the markets for financing, we get the very best rates and terms. So it's a very valuable sort of asset to have and maintain. I think we all have a step with wanting to maintain that.
Well, call it what it is. We keep people's dollars in their pockets and they can spend them the way they see fit, and not like government spend it for them.
Exactly. How much do you want? We could go on and on.
There's a lot of great things to yeah.
We've got, something else that comes to mind, I think is tremendous asset, is corporate citizens that we have here, such as Luckstone, Capital One, PFG, Farm Bureau,
Comment.
Carmack. And Lily Cumming. It's going to be a tremendous benefit to us.
Geography.
Tell me about that.
Proximity to a major metropolitan area while still being able to have the rural component of our county.
You just put luck in there. Luckstone.
I was being humble.
Along with the geography, having the James River line our southern border.
Well, and having 2 interstates.
Ideally demographics.
I'd say also, I think we benefit from the competition that comes with our geography, in that you can name 5 counties that we directly compete against in this area.
And when you say competition, are you guys, do you feel like you're competing with Chesterfield and Rhinedown, Hanover? Are you competing for people or resources or dominant businesses? Like, what's the?
Depends
I'm
on
sorry.
the locality.
Yeah. But no, we definitely compete for talent. We compete for funding projects.
Sorry, guys. Anybody use your hair? So we benefit from competition. We compete for talent, and what else?
Funding. We compete for funding.
So strengths-wise, so far, what we've got is we're small size administratively. Everybody knows everybody else. We're cohesive. We've got engaged citizens. They're willing to contribute, they're willing to volunteer, they're willing to help with policy. Our current financial position is really strong. We've got the best schools, we've got the best fire, police, public safety. Everyone seems to care within the county, so they're here not just for a paycheck. We've got a beautiful and rural nature of Goochland, so everybody wants to protect it. We've got diversification for our size, so socioeconomically, demographically, and from an infrastructure standpoint. The culture of the county, so we've got a sense of pride and belonging, even alongside some of these high-density areas. The county's generous, so people are willing to help their neighbors. Goochland Cares is an example of that. We're historic and patriotic. We've got to do more with less philosophy. That allows us to create unique solutions and have a sense of ownership. And really, the citizens do contribute to the community. We've got AAA bond rating, so that financial strength gives us flexibility where we get the best rates and the best terms. We're able to keep people's dollars in their pockets. We've got great corporate citizens. Look, Cap One, Farm Bureau, CarMax, and others. We've got Lily Cumming, which is a great benefit. Our geography, so our proximity to some of the major metro areas, but we still have a rural feel. The James River is an asset, as are the two interstates. And then we benefit from competition. We're competing against these local counties for talent, funding, etc. Anything else from a strength standpoint you think is going to be important as we think about the plan for the future?
Yeah, I would say that in the last 8 years-ish, we've really punched above our weight regionally for what we can contribute to the region. We may not have the population, but I think people are looking to Goochland now to go, hey, what are they doing? And we're able to influence beyond our borders. Capture that in 4 words.
What's an example of how we do that?
I think if you look at the leadership that we have attending, like Plan RVA or our TPO, so where we come together collectively to plan as a region, our 1 vote against, our 2 votes against Chesterfield's 12 doesn't seem like a lot, but when we have staff that are leading very critical committees because they are seen as leaders in the community, I think that's critical and I think a huge benefit to our citizens.
Well, also, I feel like we're nimble, so we can react quickly. I view almost a strength and a weakness here because sometimes we don't act as quickly as we can. So I think we can learn there. There's a learning opportunity to be able to accomplish more and more efficiently, more quickly, but yet we do that. And I don't want to get political, but I think we are a conservative county, and I think that's a plus right now in the environment that we live and work in. That's my 2 cents.
That's it. Lowest taxes. I don't know that we stress that enough, that regionally, we are consistently the lowest.
When was the last time we had a tax? Does anybody know?
Last year on the budget. The rate was the same, but we voted for a tax increase by keeping the rate the same because of assessments.
Aside from
2012.
Inflation.
2012.
All right, so let's shift gears, and this is kind of an iterative process, so we might have to circle back to it, and I'll be capturing whatever notes you guys give me. I'll be capturing. Good. And maybe Allison in the back, if you could help us figure out like a projector. Or something. Perfect. Thank you. If the technology fails us, we got a plan B. So weaknesses so far, and again on the weaknesses side, no perfect people, no perfect organizations, no perfect counties. So one potential weakness that I've already captured already is that we might be able to react more quickly and efficiently. So what else, from your perspective, might be a weakness in the county that this game plan could address?
You say reacting quickly was a weakness?
We, utilization of our strengths. I mean, we've got this bond rating and we've done one tranche of bonds. We've got to use the tools in our toolbox.
I'd say experience. And it's nothing, against Dr. Rayleigh and staff. It's just the example I can come up with is Valley Link. It was a state issue, but it affected our residents. We really didn't know what to do. It was, Louise's Dwayne Adams really started getting that ball rolling, to come up with something. I don't know if he had experience in that before, but I know that none of us did. So, things like that is a weakness.
And do you feel like that's primarily at sort of county administration level, or is that more broadly than that?
I would say, probably more broadly. A lot of these board members, Neil, you've done what, 2 terms? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even on the board, this is my first term. I didn't know what I didn't know. So.
What else?
The size and scale. They are what they are. We can't change them overnight. And we do want a seat at the table with players like Henrico, like City of Richmond, like Chesterfield, but we just have to acknowledge that size and scale are limiting factors.
So it's basically because of the demographics of the Henrico or Chesterfield are so big, so there's so much infrastructure, it's hard to compete and win.
Doesn't mean they're right, but they have size and scale.
Awesome. What else?
I think with the size and scale, one of the aspects of that is the question of being right staffed. Because I think right now our staff can really only handle the critical things. So to be able to have time to, have a minute to think of something, they've got to get stuff done that's due in 5 minutes. How do you think about stuff 50 years down the road?
Is it, do you feel like that inability to look ahead, is that mainly about staffing levels?
It's a great question. That's an opportunity. Understanding root cause of some of these things, again, takes time to get to, which we're doing everything we can to keep we're running the day-to-day, we're running the engine. But, to make any changes, you're changing the tire on that car as it's moving down the highway at 120.
We have reactive financing in that there are a lot of forward-thinking things that need to be funded, but we've been reactive for so long that it's challenging to pivot.
So that reactive funding is more about a crisis happens, something's happened in the past, we're trying to pay for, look at the rear view as opposed to look at the windshield about, like, here's what's coming if we invested here, here, and here. All of our citizens.
Right.
Yeah. And there are pros and cons. Yeah, it's hard to put that on the weakness because it can also be a strength that it shows fiscal prudence, but at the same time, it's challenging.
I think a lot of these things can, in some ways will be a strength, in some ways will be a weakness. We're you're trying to find that just right place.
Yeah.
Forward versus backwards, et cetera.
I also think that because we run so lean, we require development to make any infrastructure changes. So our reliance on development to change things requires change, which is not something that I think is a strength of our citizens. Quite the opposite. There's an absolute, we don't want to change. We want to preserve what we have, which is completely appropriate, but makes it challenging.
Tell you something I worry about, I'm not sure how much, I guess it is a weakness, is my feeling is we've got many more projects. For instance, our capital improvement plan is right now currently not affordable in a timely manner for us. And so I think, you know, we are aware of that, and we are working towards trying to deal with that and eliminate that as a threat or a worry. But if you aggregate all the projects, we're talking about a courthouse, we're going to need a new school soon, we're going to on and on and on and on. You know, how do we afford to do it? And then how do we communicate that properly so that there's a good understanding among the community of why we're doing these things, or why we're focusing on the future, let's say.
Right, I would say communication
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
its own line.
Yes.
Yeah.
And messaging is,
And communication is more about like what the board's doing and communicating with citizenry. Is it more of within the county itself and the different departments being aligned and communicating well? Or is it all?
I'd say all of the above. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a team effort, and I would also, you know, include the constituents as part of the team. At least their understanding.
And by the way, these guys are this, but you know, I've spent more than a decade traveling all over the U.S. and been in hundreds of organizations and seen thousands of people, and I've yet to run into an organization that says, you know what we're really good at? Communication.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody's in it. So, not surprising. What else from a weakness standpoint? So far, we've got, we could potentially react more quickly and efficiently, utilizing our strengths, right? So we've got this great bond rating, we could do more, we've got more tools in our toolbox that we could be using. The experience within the county, whether it's the board, whether it's the administration, we don't have quite enough of what we need. Size and scale limits us, so we want to be able to compete with Henrico, Chesterfield, and just bigger. We're staffed to handle the critical things, right? So we're thinly staffed, which makes it a struggle for us to be able to look ahead. We're running the engine, but we're just running the engine. We've got reactive financing. So as we look ahead, there's more things that need to be funded. We run really lean, which means we got to have development to get things done. And then we really want to preserve what we have, so we have this culture about preserving the status quo. It means that we don't really want to change, and doesn't make us particularly adaptable. We've got more projects than we can afford in a timely manner. We need to find ways to afford all the things we need to do. We need to communicate with the community effectively. We need to explain our why. And just communication more broadly is something that we need to strengthen. What else?
I think I'll call it stakeholder analysis, in that we encounter a lot of challenges because the citizens don't understand what is local, what is state, what is federal. And that ties directly into communication. But I mean, I'll give you a good example. It's transmission lines are Dominion and the SEC. We involve ourselves and play a part of it, but we need to communicate. Look, you have delegates, you have agencies, you have areas that do these things, and that's just an understanding of the real stakeholder analysis.
And is it that the the different stakeholders within the county just don't understand all of the decision making and who's got the authority to make those decisions, or is it more that we don't understand what our stakeholders really want?
I think it's heavily, I think it's the latter, in that they've got to, maybe it's death by 1,000 acronyms, is people just, I think a lot of people get bogged down by that and, oh, that's just government. Instead of understanding, no, one, that's state government, that's local government, that's where the Fed comes into play. And,
I know what I think.
we can find ourselves bogged down by
That's fine.
general apathy and malaise in government as a whole.
Do you find that as a
Good
part of
job.
the county's government?
What?
Do you find that malaise and the feeling of being bogged down within the county?
I mean, when I say, no, I would stress government as a whole. Yeah, because I don't think, it's one of those things where our hands are tied in so many situations. And we just have to say, yes, you have a right to be upset about government. But let's call the players out in the right players.
If I may add, just from one of the things that when I conducted this exercise with some small citizen groups, is that government can be hard to access, government can be hard to understand. Government does use a lot of acronyms, and where do I find this and how do I access that? So similar to what Mr. Waters is saying, is it's complex and it's hard for a layperson who's raising a family and working a full-time job and doesn't live and breathe this like we do every day to have an understanding of what happens. And so the challenge, and it's maybe an opportunity too, is how can we better engage and share and
Right. And
communicate there.
on that, I know we're kind of getting off track, but I've thought about this as well, is maybe as these issues come up, we generate our own flow charts. Like say the transmission line, figure out what their standards are for their SSC application, timeline, and kind of just an easy flow chart for citizens to quickly access. Okay. Just a thought.
I think one of the opportunities, and this is not going to be popular, but I think it's true, is that we have an opportunity to start to rebuild trust. I think our citizens are questioning, they're questioning us in ways that I never thought I'd get questioned about my character, my motivations, and that to me is a direct result that we need to work on building trust.
Yeah,
So what do you think's going on that's undermining that sense of trust between the citizens and the government or the
The internet.
I think, we're talking about an issue that is so important to a sizable number of folks that they are totally focused on that and maybe not really acknowledging or, all the other things we were talking about and the positiveness, the strengths of this county, because that one area is so important to them, or so significant for them to pay attention to. I think I may be dovetailing on Charlie's thinking, but, as a player in the region, we are somewhat insignificant relatively to the big guys. I mean, we're nudging up against some fairly sizable metropolitan, population areas. And how do they think of us as a player, and how do we, the challenge for us would be to convince or to be a player, to, convince them that we're worthy and, we should, and so forth. And I think that's a challenge. I think, you know, in a lot of areas, we've done a good job. For instance, the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, with Mr. Spoonhour's participation in that, we were considered a major player, a significant player, and Goochland benefited from that. And some transportation projects that we otherwise would not have gotten.
So it's potentially, you've got limited time, money, energy, deciding really intentionally what the priorities are, and then where you want to punch above your weight class. Like, where do you want to have that significant influence?
Kind of building on what Mr. Christie said, one of our opportunities is our team doesn't have the systems in place to help support the type of work we do in 2026, right? So I'm not sure we have the project management tools. We don't have the databases. We don't have the tools that they need in order to be as effective as they can be. I think that, I know we're not doing root cause, but not having time, I mean, it takes time, right? You've got to figure out what system you're bringing, and implementation, and adaptation. Like, it's not an easy thing to do.
Now, I'm going to jump in on the communication and trust. In 2011, I think some people still refer to it as the revolution year, where all but one member of the school board and board of supervisors were not reelected. And people don't trust this board. And we don't communicate. And it's unfortunate, but I have many people say I'm the only person that responds to their emails. And there's a bunch of them. I don't think it's true, but I'm sharing what I'm hearing. And people say, I don't hear from the other guys. And so when you don't hear from them, they start to make their own answers. And they start to fill in the blanks the way they want to. We've had a couple of pretty significant rezoning decisions. Highfield is a 238 home. We've got several on the horizon. Sporting Clays is coming up. A lot of people are upset about that. Who's listening to us? We had a vote last November on the Technology Overlay District. Almost unanimous opposition to it, still enacted. We've gotten good reports on both Valley Link and what we have done to step up and oppose that. And then the folks with Lilly. I've heard so many times, why can't you get another Lilly? Everybody, 2 people have told me they don't want Lilly. One doesn't think we should have pharmaceuticals because that's not God's will for us. And the other one doesn't like the discharge, the water discharge. Everybody else loves Lilly. We have a significant distribution center going in from Amazon, and that was opposed by a lot of folks, and it's still going in. So when we look at, or I look at, where the public is coming out, and it's disparate, but primarily in the eastern part of the county, folks think you aren't listening to us, you don't care what we think, the deal's already been cut, why do I even bother? And so the communication, I don't know how we fix that other than we just say, I appreciate what you're saying, I have a different perspective, and this is why I'm going to vote. Manny Alvarez gave me some great advice as he left the board. He said, Jonathan, just don't cast a vote up there. Tell people why you're voting the way you do. So I do think that we have a trust issue, guys. People do not believe that we're acting in their best interest because they are showing up. They are voicing their opinions. And in many instances, the board is voting in direct opposition to what people are saying. Now, Kim Peterson gave me a lot of counsel, my predecessor in District 5. And he says, I'm casting votes for 28,000 residents, not the 70 people in the room. And so you need to take a holistic approach. And I concur with that. I was chastised by somebody who does support a data center coming into the county and said that it is because of lack of courage to make the hard decisions that aren't politically popular is why our electrical grid is in the mess it's in today. That's a heavy burden for me as an individual to carry, but I guess I'm up to it. But I responded to him, is it possible that there actually is a difference of opinion? that maybe that isn't the best location for a specific economic development. And he and I are meeting and we're having conversations, but if we don't have that kind of interaction and communication, people are going to say, you guys have already got your minds made up. You're going to do what you're going to do, and it's a backroom deal. And then as Mr. Spoonhour, I am still looking for the payoffs I'm receiving in the bank account. I guess it's in the Caymans because I sure don't see it. But yes, I am in the back pocket of developers because of some of the activity that's going on in this county. So I would say if there is a paramount issue that this board needs to address and this administration needs to address, it's trust with the people we serve. Dr. Raley's doing a great job. He has taken us light years in a year with his community interactions and his small groups and his communication. He's been advised by me that he perhaps over-communicates. I get a lot of emails from Dr. Raley, and sometimes I miss important things he wants me to pay attention to because I'm reading about accolades that we got in the planning department that somebody answered the phone on the first ring. I mean, so it's a balance, but I think trust is the biggest weakness we have right now. People don't trust us as government, that we are just doing what we want. And that segues into the newness of this community. I moved here in 1990. And it was 14,000 and change, and we're up to almost 28,000. There are a lot of people who have lived in this county for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And I'm not going to say they don't know the Goochland way, but they are bringing values and experiences, say from Henrico, say from Chesterfield, say from Ohio or Michigan. And they're not used to a smaller community of 28,000 that has part-time elected officials. I mean, I do the math. I'm doing this for $2.20 an hour. I mean, and I've willingly stepped up to do it. But with that, where there's a beer commercial, with something comes great responsibility. I don't watch much TV, but I asked for this job, so I guess I got to do it as best I can. And that is understand and explain why that person and I are going to disagree, that I think this is the right decision. And guess what? Next year they'll have a chance to decide if they want me to keep doing this job. And that's why we have, a representative republic. But no, all of these things we're talking about, there are opportunities, some more so than weaknesses. But our biggest weakness is trust. People don't trust us. And I don't know how to fix that. I'll be honest with you.
If I may piggyback off of Mr. Lyle and Mr. Winfrey, I would say that we're not connecting the dots. The residents, they are focused in, for lack of a better term, their backyard, what's closest to them, as they rightfully should. But we do a terrible job of bringing them to our position. We have the whole board, the whole county, and we need to be able to connect the dots as to why we're leaning this way, that way, considering this, what we can reject, what we can't reject. We can't just, without, handing over an easy lawsuit to an industry that they don't like, we can't just push them out the door or treat them badly. So I think bringing all of that together, the logic, which I'm terrible at, so I'm guilty, as Mr. Lyle said, I don't really opine too much on why I vote a certain way. If somebody calls me on the phone, I'll explain it or an email as best I can. But I think as an organization, we can do that together and do a SWOT analysis on each case-by-case basis. Like this is the advantages, these are the disadvantages, and put it out to the public.
I'm going to take one of Tom's favorite topics and steal it from him, but one of the opportunities we have is, as a board, we don't get to do this. Like, I don't get to sit down with my peers who have different ideas and be able to have honest conversations. I grew up my career has been coaching, kind of doing what you do, coaching teams. This job where you need the collaboration the most, legally, we can't have it. And when we do have it, or we try, it's backroom deals, right? So but it goes to Mr. Lyle's points on trust. But the opportunity we have is to figure out how do we, my background is not 95% of what I do for the county. So being able to rely on the collective wisdom of the board, it's challenging because we can't do it. So I don't know if that's communication or just, I think it's intentional from the state, that's obvious.
Yeah, so the structure of the supervisor's
Yeah.
collaborating.
For me to collaborate, I have to make 4 phone calls. That's after a phone call, probably with the county administrator. You know how that game goes. It doesn't matter. I want to have a consistent conversation, but and it's not to cook things. It's to arrive at the best solution by getting different. So many times I think I walk into a meeting knowing I'm going to vote, and then one of these guys says something like, that's an interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way. Boy, wouldn't it have been nice if we all could have sat in a room and talked about this.
Yeah, I think local government's unique to that. The General Assembly, they have their caucuses. I mean, they get one side of the aisle gets together and they have their meetings and hammer stuff out. The other side of the aisle does the same. And at various times, I guess the administration, the governor's office will get involved too. But it is, we have our 2x2s, and even today, I will get information that says other board members. It doesn't say Jonathan thinks this, Charlie thinks this, Tom thinks this. It's other board members are not in favor of X, Y, or Z, or are in favor of X, Y, or Z. And so, to Neil's point, he is the master of the networking. I mean, I get more calls from him than I do my kids. I don't know, it says something about me as a parent, maybe, but
I'm just needy.
Hey, Tom, if you could help us in that area, this whole day is worth it, I can tell you. Because
Get more calls from my kids.
Yeah, he nailed it. It's probably my number one frustration, because I'm sure what you're used to, coming together face to face, let's deal with this. And we're prevented from doing that. But I think there may be some things we could do within the legal framework, of not violating procedure. Like for instance, on purpose meeting one-on-one with every other supervisor during the month or something like that. To sort of cross-pollinate.
So I'd say we overcomplicate things in some situation, and I'll use an example, is loading up on regulations and additional restrictions is big government. That's a simple principle, but that's, that seems to be the way that a lot of people want to go. And at its core, that's, I'll speak for myself, that's not something I'm willing to violate. And, and then and I think it goes back to philosophy. What is our philosophy? And, if you hire if you elect a supervisor, but the roles are $16,000 or $17,000 a year, should that person be 70 hours a week? That's if the philosophy is, I'm going to be there and be a micromanager, or am I going to be a somebody actually governing, which are far different principles. But we have to understand our philosophy and stick to it in order to do it right.
Trying to synthesize what I hear you saying.
Tom, suppose you worked in a company where the standard rule was only 2 people could be together at any one time. I mean, suppose you were conducting this with 2 at a time and then 1, and then trying to bring it all together. Something's going to drop through the cracks. It's not going to be as meaningful.
We did some work years ago with the city of Richmond, and the partnership between the chamber and the city of Richmond. We've got sort of these individual supervisors who are elected, and they're elected to change the world, and they get in the office and they find out they get to fix potholes, and that's it. And then you get them versus the school board versus the mayor's office, and you get them grappling with, okay, who gets to decide what. So, just to recap what we've talked about weaknesses so far. And these could be weaknesses that are inherent to the county, they could be inherent to the county administration, or they could be inherent to the county board functions, like what we're talking about. So we could be more quick, more efficient. We could use our strengths more effectively. Our experience is limited in some areas. Size and scale, we're punching above bigger counties. We're only staffed to handle the critical things. We have reactive financing, so we're really fighting fires as opposed to looking ahead. There's all kinds of things that we could fund. We run lean and mean, which means you've got to have development to get things done. We've got a culture of trying to preserve what we have, and we don't really want to change culturally. We've got more stuff to do than before in a timely manner. Communication is a weakness, where we could be communicating more amongst each other, with the populace back to us, with our stakeholders, really understanding their needs, and then effectively communicating our decisions to those stakeholders. The citizens don't necessarily understand, like, what's local, what's state, what's federal, what can we do, what are we empowered to do, what are we not empowered to do. Our hands are often tied by big government, so there's apathy or malaise that we run into. Government can be difficult to understand and access. So as a citizen, or as part of the public, there's lots of acronyms, it's hard to get to, it's hard to find what we need. And then right now, we've got a trust issue, where citizens are actively questioning our government. We've got this opportunity to rebuild trust. So we're considering decisions all the time. Those can provoke reactions, and ultimately undermine the trust we're trying to build if people don't understand why we decide what we decide. And we've got really mixed feelings out in the county about attracting larger businesses. So some people love Lilly, some people are nervous about Lilly, some people love the development, some people don't love the development.
Just 2 people.
Just two. 2 people don't love Lilly, everybody else, all of them.
That I've heard.
And we've got this opportunity, especially in the eastern part of the county, to rebuild trust. Leaving them feeling heard, helping them understand that they're in their corner, helping that we're acting in their best interests, making our choices more transparent. The issues that we're facing impact a large number of people, and it can overshadow what's really good about the county and what's going right. Currently, the team that we've got in place doesn't have the systems and tools that they need to really handle the work that we're doing in 2026. So two examples are project management, things like just having access to data, and that stuff takes time, it takes money, investment. We've got a lot of new people who come into the county who might not understand the Goochland way, or understand that we've got part-time elected officials and sort of a small government. We've got an opportunity as a weakness. We're not connecting the dots for our citizens as to why we're making decisions and how we're leading, what the advantages and disadvantages are. Again, going back to communication. We can easily overcomplicate issues, and there's this ongoing tension between kind of big government regulations and small government. Be really clear about what our philosophy is. Any more weaknesses that you would add to that list?
Yeah.
You could potentially address?
I think as Goochland has evolved over the last, call it 12 years, I feel like we still sometimes operate as if we were 15 years ago. So, I think of, one of the things I think we can get better at is how do we manage third-party vendors for, we're hiring consultants and things like that. How do we build that as a strength? And so I don't know if these are weaknesses or opportunities. I'm not sure how we're defining them. So I think that piece, I think back in the day there wasn't as much of a need to. I'm not sure what the priorities were, but I feel like we need to build the strength of building good business cases and being able to identify return on investment, to be able to really rank these projects by effort and effectiveness. And then lastly, maybe is we have great citizens that volunteer, Yet we don't require a planning commissioner to get certified. We don't require any sort of additional training. So you've got great people wanting to do great things. Are we equipping them to do, even in their volunteer roles? It's hard to ask somebody on the planning commission to come and get yelled at for 5 hours and then spend 2 days taking a class for free. You know, I'm a pretty good salesman. That's a pretty tough sell even for me.
I managed to do it.
Yeah.
I got more if I take it.
I think you touched it. I think our weakness is that we don't compensate fairly, adequately for what our expectations should be as far as the quality of leadership, governance, or whatever you want to call it. And yet we pay, I've been saying 25 cents an hour. You said $2 and something.
You work
an hour.
harder than me.
But whatever. But, I think, you get what you pay for sometimes. I guess I'm a perfect example of that, but,
I'm not gonna put that in there.
We're recording.
I think we ought to look at that and see what our expectations are. If we're gonna pay you fairly, then we want you to take the certification course, that type of thing. So I don't know. We gotta look at that.
Anything else?
We don't have balanced districts 1 through 5, and I'll couch that. You can't change the fact that the East is going to see 80% of the applications, but it makes it challenging in terms of, balancing it across how we work together, how we get things done. And so it's very I guess there's not necessarily, I don't know that it's necessarily a weakness in that it's just different than so many other municipalities where they either have a much more homogeneous playing field or, I'll go to Chesterfield, they really stick that district, your issue, that district, your issue. And that's different than what we deal with.
And there's a perception with that as well, that, because I'm on the far western end, that I really don't care, whatever happens on the eastern end. And I'm sure that perception carries across between all the districts. When the reality is, I know that all of these board members have, if something comes up in District 1, they all have concerns and their input on it. And District 2 is the same. District 5, I've reached out to Mr. Lyle several times on issues that pertain to District 1 that I can use his input on. And I know that he is not going to look at it from a I'm from District 5 perspective. He's going to look at it from a Goochland perspective. And so I think that just that perception is a weakness that we can kind of improve on.
So it sounds like, the way that you guys ultimately want to run this board is collaborate more, communicate more, work effectively.
Be nice.
More, because you really do represent the entire county, so not just the district you're elected from, but all of you. But some of the structures in place about, county governance prevent you from collaborating more effectively. And then that can drive the perception of the public that if I'm in District 1, I don't care about 5 and vice versa.
Right. Yep.
Well, the natural political game, we don't get voted, we don't get votes from other districts.
Yeah.
That's a harsh reality.
You get elected as a team, but you
Yeah.
gotta play as a team.
And some governments have at-large representatives. The structure of this community is that there are 5 who are elected from their districts, and that it's just the way it is, but that contributes to some of the things that we've heard here today.
The communication challenge again comes back, and this is again our hands tied Charlie's point that the General Assembly, we're Dillon Rule State, which means we get to do what we're told we're allowed to do. We don't get to do what is, in my opinion, in the best interest of our residents. Disclosure. Anybody who buys property in District 4 or 5 should understand they are in proximity to a decades-long, high-growth, economic growth area. I mean, the reason we have municipal water and sewer, Tuckahoe Creek Service District, is we wanted to attract business. This wasn't a 35,000 or 3,500 acre game preserve. It was to get commercial business that would utilize the water and sewer. Previous boards made decisions that, well, we don't have a lot of water and sewer usage, let's put residential there. So we created, and I say we as a county governance, created our own conflict, and if you will, our own problems by saying, hey, let's put uncompatible communities right next to each other. Well, that's the hand this board's been dealt, now it has to play it out. But we aren't allowed to require developers and or realtors to disclose. You're buying a house, and across the road is M1, which is our industrial property. We had a proffer from a developer, Highfield, that says, we proffer to disclose to every homeowner that they are buying property across the road from M1, and our county attorney correctly advised us we're not allowed to accept that proffer. It's in conflict with state law. So we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. It's a caveat emptor state, as the realtors told us. Well, they have to do their own research. Well, how about if we help them? Because as Jonathan said, we know stuff they don't know, and we're not allowed to tell them. And boy, I tell you, I've hit my glass ceiling because trying to be part of a legislative process at the state or federal level, you'd be saying nice, I hope nice things at my service, because I would not be long for this world. It would absolutely put me in an early grave. So I don't know how we can communicate better within, and maybe it is we aren't asking permission, we're going to ask forgiveness, we're just going to do it anyway. And the county prints up its own disclosure and says, hey, we're passing this out, we're going to stick it on telephone poles under whatever we have to do. But people don't always appreciate what they're buying into. And so why are they surprised that, gee, across the road from me, I had a phone call from a fellow from Songbird the other day, says, well, I really didn't know that I was next to an industrial park. And it's like, well, yes, you are, and it's likely going to see industrial development you might not like. And how do I help them? How do we help them as a county? I don't have an answer for it. And so maybe Luck wants to take out skywriting opportunities, and we'll just put big skywriting out there.
I'll pass up.
We appreciate it.
By the way, Tom, years ago, that state law did not exist, and the deeds for the park right here across the street say you're this close to a quarry, which, you know, we just wanted people to know. We didn't want to put people into the neighborhood that were unhappy about that. Let them know in advance, but
Let them know and then be
not the state law
unhappy.
at the time.
So guys, we've been at this a little more than an hour, so we'll take a little break. So why don't we take 10 minutes? We've got restrooms back here around the corner. I believe Lisa's got you some donuts and coffee in the back. And when we come back, we'll shift gears and talk about opportunities. Right? When we think about the county, what are the opportunities ahead of us that we can potentially lose?
Can you define opportunities?
Yeah.
'Cause-
Opportunities might be, for example, what are some things that we could do that would make a positive impact on public businesses?
Okay, thanks.
An opportunity could also be, we can talk about how the board functions. You can tinker around and play with how the board works, right? So what would be legal and yet help us collaborate?
Okay, great, thanks.
How could we increase our communication to the public?
Thank you.
All right, let's take 10.
I think 20 years.
difficult time hearing some of the conversation.
All right, so we'll talk about opportunities and threats. And as Neil asked the question, he's like, well, back in our Cap 1 days, an opportunity was just a weakness, and it was an opportunity to improve. So as you guys think about opportunities, what could we do as a part of the strategic plan to strengthen the county that could help us leverage some of our strengths, that could help us make a fundamental positive difference in the lives of our citizens? And so far, opportunities you guys have talked about is we need to make more time to look ahead 50 years, really do long-term things. So how do we carve that out? As issues arise, could we build like simple flow charts and timelines, easy ways of communicating so that the public understands what we're deciding and why we're deciding? We talked about we have an opportunity to rebuild trust. So let's have a plan on how we're going to do that. We talked about how to continue to influence and be a player in some of these larger communities and counties. We need to explore ways that the board can collaborate more effectively within our county governance. And then finally, we talked about this idea of like, could we strengthen our vendor management? So as you guys think about additional opportunities, what might they be?
Shared collective goals.
Talking about that.
So what are our growth targets per area? What, if I'm a department manager, what is my growth plan if I have one? By not having goals, and they should be agreed upon by the board and the citizens to say, yes, we don't plan on growing, District 5 15%, so we only have to grow this one, but we all know where we're heading.
Clearly defined roles. By that, just capabilities of people, systems, departments, so that there's an understanding of what government actually can do.
Should.
Versus, I think sometimes it gets do everything. There's the conception, go do everything, go solve this, and it's like no, but that's on us to convey it.
The word "can do" was there, and Charlie made the comment earlier. What is the role of government? And I'm consistent, and I tell people in my world it's three things, and that's public safety, that's education, that's transportation. Everything else is a nice to have after that. And so do we have that role of county government defined? We had a esteemed member of our board who used to say, not government's job, not government's job. And parks were one of the areas that is the government's job to entertain us. And so there's a lot of reasons to have parks, quality of life, economic development, but do we have concert, or at least are the people who are coming onto the board understand what they see government's role? And there is a variety of approaches. Some people think government is supposed to do a whole lot more than I think it should do. And if those people get elected, I will have, I hope, civil conflict or disagreement with them, because I'm not going to want to grow government. It is, it does take 2 weeks to process an application in Goochland because we have 3 people in that department, not 13. And so there is an expectation that even with fire and rescue, there are national standards of response time, but in a more rural area like Goochland's western part, you may have a 5-minute response time versus a 3-minute response time because we don't have 3 fire stations in the western part of the county. We've got 1 or 2. And so it is an opportunity, at least for those of us who serve, to explain both the staff and the people that are casting ballots. This is what you're going to get if you put me on this board of supervisors. I'm not going to vote for a lot of nice to haves. I'm going to try and keep more money in your pocket. You decide if you want to go to a park. I guess Yellowstone. I mean, I'm not being flippant, but we can't be, I don't believe it's government's job to be all things to all people. And some of the amenities that you would see in a larger community like a Henrico with a $1.4 billion budget, you're not going to see in a Goochland with a $107 million budget. But we got 28,000 people. We don't have 328,000 people. So that would be what, do we have an opportunity to at least express the governance philosophy to people serving? Because if you don't have 3 people agreeing, then nothing's going to happen.
I do think we have an opportunity to educate folks on rural living. I think about, I did a ride along with the fire company, and one of the things that I found very interesting was people on rural roads don't know how to act when an emergency vehicle comes up behind them. You know, they're stopping on a hill, or they don't know how to pull over. You know, if you don't have a 8-foot roadway, they don't. You know, starting November 1st, I will start getting the calls from the people that just moved here because muzzleloader season has started. And damn it, I moved to the suburbs, and people are shooting around my house. Like, first off, you didn't move to the suburbs. Second, yeah, welcome to Goochland.
Same thing with farm equipment on the roads. I mean, people at Farm Bureau constantly is trying to educate that balers don't move as fast as a BMW. And passing on a county road with no double line that could be a call for EMS. I mean, it is different in Goochland than Henrico and Chesterfield. Amelia may be the same, but
I'd say bring citizens. And we do a pretty good job of this, but I think that we can really nail it of bringing citizens along for the ride on some of the good stuff. You know, like we potentially have, you know, the Reynolds property becoming, you know, a major hub for the, you know, the pharmaceutical adult training. And, you know, a lot of people may not even realize that, but, you know, kind of bring them in and show them, like, hey, this is what we're trying to do. If we get it, then great, you know. Have some tours, you know, and not just in the middle of the day. Do some in the evening when, you know, the working folks can actually get out there and explore it and have something to be proud of.
I think on those lines, we have an amazing program that's run by citizens, but the Goochland Leadership Enterprise. And it meets every year, and it's, you know, people learn about government, but I think there's an opportunity for us to explain how do you engage. You know, I do believe, I don't know, does the chair go every year? Like, I think somebody from the board goes, but we don't really talk about here's how to engage with the board. Here's what a board supervisor actually does. It's GLE for short.
Like a supervisor ride along.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we can leverage our strengths, and we need to leverage our strengths to combat dissatisfaction in bigger players. And so, you know, I take, we manage our finances well and maintain a AAA rating and get mandates stuffed down our throats. And, you know, and we have low tax rates, and they give us a lot of opportunities, but, you know, I think we just don't highlight those enough. We don't lean on those enough to say, hey, we're doing a lot of these things in spite of other forces, and but those other forces have big PR machines. They have lobbyists. They have everything we don't, and it's a constant struggle.
So
talked about earlier, having AAA rating, having sort of all these tools in our toolkit. Like, what do you think the county should be doing to leverage those tools in the toolkit?
I personally think we need to be more forward thinking in our, I think I mentioned support financing strategies and understanding that we just need repetitions. One of the biggest challenges to small government is we don't have enough reps as an issuer, as a user. And so we go very methodically and I'd say, incredibly slowly in some instances. And you're never gonna be efficient if you don't get enough reps under your belt.
The opportunity and why that's not a concern or an opportunity for me is I don't think we should be borrowing money we don't need. It's something that I've gone back, and this is a benefit of being here for a while maybe, I've looked at the CIPs from 10 years ago. And there are a lot of things that never got done and aren't on the CIP today. And so there are changes in the needs, and I'm a big believer if we're going to put debt on the books, we ought to ask the voters, do you want to do this? We had 85% of the people say, yeah, we want to borrow $96 million in 2021. And so I have a comfort level, and the opportunity is to get the citizens engaged, maybe start to rebuild some trust by saying, do you want to borrow X dollars to renovate an old elementary school for more government? Do you want to invest $10 million in more parks? Do you want to invest, fill in the blank, to do X, Y, or Z? And if they say yes, they're going to be paying the freight. And so I would think that's an opportunity is to get more citizen involvement, utilize the triple, because it was a labor of love for Kim Peterson to get that rascal. And now that we have it, let's use it where it's appropriate. But those are all going to be general obligation bonds, and those have to be done through a referendum. So I'm not advocating we have a referendum every year, but to Charlie's point, the more often we do it, the more often the market's going to know who we are, and maybe we'll get bigger premiums in future issuances. I can't say, but
The only caution I would have to that, though, would be on a referendum, it just says, do you want to borrow $50 million for a new courthouse? It doesn't have the financial caveats and advantages and leveraging built into it.
well, I'll pass this along. This is what we issued and we paid for, that we gave out to the public, and it's the actual ballot vocabulary is on there, but it does talk to some degree, and there's the communication effort there. So,
But I mean, I remember voting on the courthouse referendum. Me personally, I voted no. I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of borrowing money. But there are advantages to using that triple when interest rates are low. I mean, just so on and so forth. But that's never going to be captured on a referendum ballot. It kind of goes back to the full picture. That's each referendum has just a snippet of what the action is or the logic behind it, and not the full picture. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I don't think it's as simple.
I think this is a perfect example of the opportunity that we have, which is getting to a plan that we agree on.
yeah.
Right? Like that's the beauty of this, is that, okay, great, let's have this discussion. Let's be ready for when something pops up that's a great economic
Right now, we have to do it one-on-one,
Right,
two-on-two,
right.
and or we can do it now. I'm
Just to add to that, there's a human nature involved. And I just drill it right down to individual, he wants a new car, and for that person to build a sinking fund until he's got enough to buy that new car, there's so many things that come to play during that time that it would take to do that, that he would spend it on, the need. But if you borrow and pay it back, you'll pay back a loan. But anyway, I think we've got some resources that are opportunities in the county. For instance, our CTE program is a tremendous resource because we're probably one of the best in the state on it, and we are committed to expand on that and so forth. So our discipline to get that expanded and realize the benefit and the fact that that's a resource, we have an opportunity there. We have a lot of history in this county that perhaps we could utilize more from a tourism standpoint. I'm thinking of Tuckahoe Plantation. Everybody knows how I feel about that. It's recently been put up for sale. But we also have the State Farm down here, which is dormant and pristine location in our county. And Jonathan brought up the Reynolds campus. That's another tremendous asset that is an opportunity for us. And I think if we would go around and identify more of those, and then discipline ourselves to pay attention to those things, because those things are not everyday operational things which you have to get done. But I liken it to perhaps doing exercise. You have to discipline yourself to take the time. You've got other things to do, but you have to force yourself to do that period of exercise. So we would make that a mantra perhaps in our day-to-day activities. We have to spend time and we have to see progress on certain things that become goals.
Tom, I can't believe you didn't say the number of Richmond grads in the county were.
We need more of that. Oh yeah, spiders. We need more spiders.
Clearly, you're UVA. What else do you think about opportunity? Are there areas in the county that we need to invest in? Think about the county administration. Like if you were going to build out capability, some of the things you guys identified as weaknesses were, we're not equipped to do the work that we need to do in 26, or we don't have the staff to think ahead, or we have just enough to keep the car moving down the highway, but not enough to be able to drive where we want to drive. So, like, if you were going to invest in capability, where might that be?
For me, public safety, transportation, and education. Those are the three core deliverables, I think, of county level government. Do we have the right infrastructure for fire rescue and the sheriff's department and the courts and our Commonwealth's attorney? That's all part of public safety in my world. I don't know, Neil has done yeoman's work in getting us part of the CBTA and additional resources for roads. Henrico County next to us manages their own road system, and they are able to do things that we have to go hat in hand, bended knee to VDOT and say, will you please do this for us? And then we compete with a lot of other municipalities to get the resources to do it. With the CBTA monies, we're starting to get $1 million here, $1 million there, and that's real money for me, but road construction isn't always the least costly item out there. And then we had an experience last January, I reckon it was, that the city of Richmond mismanaged its water system, and we have communities in the eastern part of the county, as well as businesses, that are dependent upon that water system. And I am uncomfortable if you will, holding our community hostage to a distant municipality. I love regionalism. If we could work it out, great. We've got our I guess, cooperative agreement with Department of Corrections and the courthouse for the water system there. That seems to be working well. Powhatan's part of that too. But boy, I tell you, there is both a cost but a benefit also of being a little more in control of what our water quality is, what our water supply is, what our road maintenance is, what our road safety is. And right now we don't have that, and I'm torn because I don't want to grow government. I don't want to grow departments, and I don't want to see a transportation department in the county of Goochland. But if it also meant we would get hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe I would. But that could be an opportunity if we had more control of our infrastructure. You know, the fourth principle in our comprehensive plan is to ensure that development does not exceed the county's ability to provide essential services and infrastructure. And so when we don't control infrastructure or some of the services, we kind of have to say no to development because we can't ensure. It's not fair, I think, for a new company or a new resident to come here and say, we're not sure if you're going to have water in 5 years. I mean, what good is that? Or your roads are never going to get improved and you're going to start sitting for 30 minutes at an intersection with a stop sign because we can't put a signal in. Because VDOT won't let us, it doesn't, in their world, warrant it. So those are opportunities, and maybe they're threats or weaknesses. You know, you take the page out of Neil's book, that this is an opportunity that's really something that needs to be worked on. But we don't have as much wherewithal to serve the citizens of Goochland on some pretty, I think, essential areas. Education, I think we get to control our destiny. We get precious little money from the Commonwealth. You know, we're composite index gives us 80, we're as low on the totem pole from the composite index as any other community out there. But we get to decide what kind of resources we're going to commit to education. And the same with our fire department and our sheriff. But yeah, opportunity would be more local control of these essential three for me: public safety, transportation, education.
You know, I think when this board first formed and we all met in January,
Legally.
There was a consensus that we didn't want to just have a good community, we wanted to have a great community. And for us to have a great community, we have to have great people doing the work. And I think we need to invest in our staff. Sometimes, you know, we balk at costs, but I think if we because if we look at the makeup of our staff, we have a lot of excellent people that have moved into new roles. And we need to support them with if we want to be the best, we have to ensure they have the tools they need. So investing in training. When I got on the board, one of the first things I did when I became chair was make the county administrator put training into each department budget. So we need to invest in folks, you know, so that they can bring all these great, we're not hiring rock stars from outside of Goochland to bring them in. We bring them in here, and this will be a threat. We bring them in here, train them up, and then somebody steals them. So that's just the world we live in. We got to be comfortable with that, but we have to say, okay, well, while you're here, we're going to get you the best tools so that you could do the best work for us, for our citizens.
Be the Pittsburgh Pirates.
We do have, well, while we do have the challenge of a massive CIP budget to fund, we also have a huge opportunity to be prepared for the next 50, to make 50 and 100-year decisions in that process. In that, let's build for the next 50 and 100 years. Let's, you know, let's not just say, yeah, we're glad we're a leader right now, but we can say we've done this in order to ensure that we're a leader for decades to come. And I think that's a great opportunity. We just have to message it appropriately. And, you know, just, I think that requires
just unwavering discipline that, you know, we're gonna, I don't know. I mean, some could say it's you know, they're, I'll use CT as a great example. That's a chance where we don't have to keep up with the Joneses. That's an example where we could say, no, we want to be one of one, you know, or we want to be the best. You know, finding those situations that are Goochland-centric, if that's the right way to
I
look
think
at it.
in that first January work session that we had, I think we described it as being a beacon of light, you know, across all the other localities. I think that's what you were trying to get at.
And I don't want, I'm sitting here thinking, are we overwhelming the staff with building a wish list? But I really think an opportunity is there for us to consider revitalizing the Centerville Village Plan. And you know, I'm only one supervisor, but I think timing is right. It may not have been right a year ago or so, but as we evolve into a different mix within that eastern part of our county, we ought to pay attention to that and decide how we're going to, on purpose, cause things to happen that meld in with that change. That makes any sense. So I think there's an opportunity there to get ahead of something, and but like I say,
Like what might be, Tom, might be some examples of that?
say again.
What might be some examples of that?
You know, what sort of amenities do we need to put in place, you know, to serve that area? What sort of lifestyle, again, amenities, you know, such more restaurants, more, you know, walkable, livable type environment. You know, I think a lot of that was present in that plan that we just need to revitalize it, take a look at it, and decide whether we want to approve it again.
I don't know if this is an opportunity, we may be doing this today, but our comprehensive plan was ideated in 2015 and adopted in 2018. And we have made changes to it, so we're in compliance with state law. We're supposed to, every 5 years, change a period or cross another T, but we're in compliance. But Dr. Raley graced us all with a book called Upstream. And the theory behind it is, don't rescue kids that are floundering in the river, go upstream and fix the bridge they're falling off of. Many of the issues, threats, if you will, that we're facing are because of growth. And not commercial growth, but residential growth. And I would think we have an opportunity to adhere to that fourth principle of the comp plan that says to ensure development does not exceed the county's ability to provide essential services and infrastructure, and have a policy that we're going to actively work to limit population growth to 1% or so a year. Because when we grow, we need more schools, we need more sheriff's deputies, we need more fire rescue. So if we don't allow growth to drive our needs, but we adapt our needs and growth together, I think there's an opportunity. And saying no is not always easy. Sometimes it's like, no, we can't go to Disney World this year because we want you to go to college in 4 years. And so that balance is it's in our comp plan. It says we're not to grow faster than we can provide essential services and infrastructure. And sometimes we are. And so we're in the process. We got one fire station, broken ground, and we've got one in engineering and architecture. So there's 2 new fire stations. How many more can we build? But we've got some excess capacity in the schools, but if we keep approving residential growth, At some point, it's like, no, we don't. Then we get to go look at our triple bond rating and say, how much money do we need or want to borrow in order to meet the essential services and infrastructure that we have committed to. So again, I think it's unfair to say, yeah, move to Goochland, and your child's going to go to school in a learning cottage, also known as a trailer, and you know we're not going to be able to get an ambulance to you for 9 minutes. And so I hope you took your nitroglycerin or your baby aspirin and your circulatory system's good, because if we grow faster than we can provide the services, we're a disservice to the folks here today, as well as the people that want to come here tomorrow. So there's an opportunity there to discipline ourselves. And no, we're not going to grow at 6-7% like we have over the last 8 or 9 years.
So, look for Elizabeth. Give me my direction about talking about this question for a different meeting and a different conversation. But we've thrown out this idea of like limiting our residential growth to 1%.
I made that percentage up.
Yeah.
I just pulled it out of the air.
But is that sort of philosophy shared by the rest of the supervisors? Like, you guys all in line with that?
We don't know. I don't know.
I'd say we have the opportunity to thwart the negative consequences of unplanned growth. And by right, if we don't do anything, by right will happen. And that is a big negative. And so it can't just be no, no, no. It has to be, no, we have a plan, and this is where it should go, how it should go, what it should look like. And so I think, you know, there's a strength to saying we don't want development in our county to look pockmarked, to be sporadic. No, we want it to be thoughtful, well planned out, and fitting to what, you know, our goals are.
And there's also a balance as well. You know, if we, in theory, just limit growth to say 1%, well, then the appraisals start going up, just based on supply and demand. So I think in general, you know, controlling growth in a healthy way is, you know, I don't mean to speak for all of you, but I think that's across the board. It's just, you know, figuring out where that is really dialed in. And to Charlie's point, you know, if we use our power to stop it altogether, we have no power to stop the buy right.
So to answer your question, Tom, is there a need for a percentage or a target? Yes. Is it 1%? Maybe, maybe not. But we need the plan to get to the plan. That's the opportunity. We got to get there. That goes into one of the threats that I'm thinking of, but off the table.
Make that an X.
Oh, I'll throw this out there too, is we have the opportunity to put ourselves in an economic situation with a lot more flexibility. And that flexibility would allow us to stop the unforeseen consequences before they emerge, you know, and head off by right development and one-off applications and, you know, develop. Like, I'll get Neil's. I mean, we've had in multiple cases that are great infrastructure improvements because that's the way we can get them. Is if we don't improve this case, we're foregoing critical infrastructure improvements. If we take it, whereas if we get more financial flexibility, then it won't be dependent on, you know, applications. It won't be dependent on one-off cases. It will be, I mean, nothing would make me happier than to take a 6-year VDOT timeline and say, no, Goochland is going to do it in 2 years and we're going to do it at half the budget. We just can't do that. We don't have that flexibility right now to make those decisions.
And when you talk about flexibility, is that more kind of your bonds and referendums? You know, like how's it? Like, is it really we got to figure out the funding mechanism?
We got to figure out
that allows us to then make infrastructure improvements that we want that allows us to attract the kind of growth that we want in the places that we want to have basically.
You gotta marry the revenue inflows with the financing strategies so that payoff is assured.
And marry that with the challenges of initiating. Like, a lot of these things we can't do.
Yeah.
The state has to drive these things, and because we've not made this, we brought some transportation resources in, but we don't manage our own projects. And even when we do, there's so much oversight from the state because they're their roads. So even though they're in our county,
What else? We have other opportunities.
I think we have an opportunity because I think we do a decent job of coordinating with the counties that are in the Richmond planning region. I think we have an opportunity to do more with the counties that are around us that aren't. So we do very little with Louisa, Fluvanna, Cumberland. I feel we do some with Powhatan, but I think we could do. I think we have an opportunity. I think Dr. Raley does, and I think we've tried to ask some staff to do that. But I think as a board, we could do a better job of building relationships with those folks. Because we're more rural than Chesterfield and Ranko Hanover and Richmond, who I interact with all the time. So their solutions aren't going to necessarily fit for us. But I got to believe some of these places are challenging, and we can learn from each other.
I think we've got great opportunity for public-private partnership as well. This is a microcosm, but this meeting is a great example of a Goochland corporate partner providing us a space and a program or platform to do these types of discussions. But I think it can go so much deeper where I think that negative sentiment around government can be torn down a little bit by saying, no, public-private partnership decreases costs, adds new expertise, finds ways to do it more efficiently.
I think we have the opportunity to do long-range pro forma budgeting, if you will, budgeting resources and the application of the use of those resources. And that would tie in with our long-range capital improvement plan, so forth and so on. A lot of the stuff that we're working on is we've made it very clear that we are pro-economic development. We are targeting a 70-30 ratio. And as we move towards that and do that intentionally, then we will, that in itself is a long way. You can't hit a switch and affect those things significantly on the short range, but on the long range you can. So I'd like to see more pro forma planning, identifying or estimating what those resources are going to be, and then how we're going to apply them.
What keeps us from doing that?
Say again?
What keeps us from doing more of that long term?
And we just caught up in day-to-day stuff, and how much does in the belly of the alligator hold? We're full up with stuff. But again, on purpose, if we do some of that, it may be productive.
I know in my career path, I was fortunate to be part of a company that grew rapidly, and grew too rapidly. And so we didn't have an opportunity to do some of the futuristic long range. And we were so busy trying to overcome or react, and that's the right word I want to use, react to scenarios, because we had new staff, people who weren't part of the culture. They'd been with us for 6 months. We landed a large account. We needed people to service them in the creative services and the account management area. And they didn't know who Response Marketing Group was. They didn't understand how we did things, customer first. And so that created demand on established cadre where we couldn't now invest time in what are we going to do in 5 years? You know, what are we going to do to adapt to the changing technology that we're seeing out there? This internet thing was starting to come about. So how are we going to do that? So when we have overloaded the circuits, we're going around resetting the breakers all the time as opposed to, gosh, you know, let's sit down and give some meaningful thought to where do we want to be in 5 years. And that is a function of a year from now, Elizabeth will have been in her job for another year, and Sarah will have been in her job for another year, and Jeremy will have been in his job for another year, and they're going to say, oh, I remember that mistake. I'm not doing that again. Or I remember the success I had, and I'm going to do that again. And that's going to come just because we're going to build more of a cadre and a culture. So the opportunity is to let these guys get a little more scar tissue, I guess, or a few more blue ribbons, and then leverage it. And God love them for being here, because, yeah, the circus is in town, and they are managing it, I think. But that is taking a lot of bandwidth. So the opportunity is to let staff get a little more seasoned, perhaps. And as they are doing that, and ask them. I used to ask clients all the time, or I'd ask staff all the time, when can you have this report to me? And I let them set the time frame. When can I get a fire hydrant report? And I was told I'd have it in March. I let that person give me that, it wasn't Elizabeth. And so they gave me their deadline, and when they missed it, it was on them. So we give these guys the opportunity to set. We define, we want these long-range ideations. When do you think you'd be able to get them to us? And I have confidence that they will manage their time if they're part of the commitment. If they decide, I'm going to have it to you by Tuesday, or Tuesday next, or a month from now, then I'm going to hold them. I mean, personally, I'm going to say, Jeremy, where is it, Drew? I mean, you told me I was going to have a report on all the fire hydrants and which ones aren't working, and now it was in March, and I didn't say what year, but I was thinking this year. So there you go. Opportunity is to encourage and empower staff and include them in this long-range thinking.
So let me recap what we've talked about as opportunities so far. So far we've said, hey, we need to be looking ahead longer term. You know, and as issues come up, let's try and paint an easy picture that people can understand about how it works and why it works. We need to rebuild trust and find ways of doing that. We've got influence to be a player along with these local counties. We want to talk about ways that the board themselves can collaborate and be more effective together, but stay inside the rule of law, potentially strengthen our vendor management. We talked about having some shared collective goals, i.e., we've got to have this strategy, and it has to be widely both aligned and adopted throughout the county. We need to clearly define roles inside county government, so we need to know what we're capable of, what we can do, what we're staffed to do, and communicate that to the public effectively. We need to really figure out, like, what is the role of county government? Make sure we're aligned on our philosophy as well as our priorities. Like, what are the have-to-haves, what are the nice-to-haves? And can we put that into our long-range plan? So we're trying to find the sweet spot of how much services we offer and what things cost, what our infrastructure investment looks like, and what our revenue is, and what's the right amount of amenities that our citizens need and demand. You know, our governance philosophy, so can we get aligned on some of those priorities and how we think about life? We talked about educating the public on rural living, so teaching them about hunting season and farm equipment on the roads. You know, we have an opportunity to bring citizens along the ride on the good stuff, like communicating our wins, communicating what's exciting, talking about all the cool stuff and ways that we're investing. Talk about educating the public on how to engage us, right? So educating them both on how the county government works, how they can better understand and get involved in this work. Someone said supervisor ride-alongs. I think that was a joke, but I wanted to take a note. So. There'll be a sign-up sheet in the background.
Being out your car.
Like, we've got these big players that we're in the midst of, and we need to continue to leverage our strengths. We need to lean on our AAA bond ratings, our strong financials, and our taxes, despite all mandates that we get from the state and beyond. We need to be thinking ahead sort of from a financial perspective. Like, you know, are we investing in taking advantage of low interest rates and our strong financials? We have opportunity to just get better at issuing bonds and doing more reps, building experience and speed as we go. There's this tension around how much money we want to borrow, because we don't want to borrow money that we don't have, but we also need to invest in our long-term plan, and we need our voters to weigh in on where should we be investing. Other opportunities is we've got have a plan we agree on, take advantage of the resources that we have. We have an opportunity to build on our natural resources and our history. From a tourism standpoint, you know, having a process and discipline of reviewing what our assets are and being really intentional about building on them as opposed to fighting fires all the time. Sorry, Mike. You know, we talked about priorities being around public safety, transportation, education. You know, do we have the right infrastructure to support them? And we know that we can't develop past our ability to provide that infrastructure. Are there ways of creating more local control over the things that we care about? We talked about water infrastructure and road building, and road maintenance being potential long-term investments. You know, if we feel like we want to have a great community, we've got to have great people, so we're investing in our staff and the training and development. You know, we want to make these 50 and 100-year decisions. We want to do more of that long-term planning and messaging for them. Where can we be the best? That should drive our investments, so we can be that beacon of light. You know, the eastern side of the county, you know, really being thoughtful about, you know, how we revitalize our game plan and our investments, what kind of amenities are people looking for, how can we be attractive. You know, our population growth is both an opportunity and a challenge, so how can we invest in the right places, in the right way, and have the right plan to support it, and get on the same page with it, dialing in infrastructure that also supports it. We need to experiment with maybe additional revenue flows, and take a look at sort of our financial flexibility, trying to build our ability to take action. We've got an opportunity to coordinate counties outside of the Richmond planning area, i.e. we as a Cumberland, we need more exposure to them as a board, more opportunities to learn from each other. We can make more, potentially build more public-private partnerships, you know, and that can help us find ways of being more efficient, being more effective, being better stewards of our financials, and then talk about it, publicize it. We need just better, you know, long-range pro forma budget. Again, we're going along with that 50 or 100-year outlook, making sure we're investing in the right places. And then what keeps us from doing that is the circuits are overloaded, we're busy flipping breakers. And then finally, we need to be, you know, as Jeremy and his staff get more time and strengthen the culture there within the county, we need to take advantage of that. And we need them to be bought in and part of this plan. So any other opportunities, as I was rattling off all that stuff, giving you a chance to reflect, do you want to add to that list?
Pretty long.
All right. So, last piece of this is about threats. So those are the things that could potentially degrade our citizens' quality of life. There could be threats to our financials. There could be threats to our demographics. There could be threats to growth. There could be threats to our business community, etc. Two threats you've identified so far is number one, we're not in control of our water infrastructure. We're not in control of our road building and maintenance. Those two things could potentially put some things at risk for us. We talked about the ongoing threat of getting really smart, talented people, and then other counties come along and poach them. So that's an ongoing threat. What else might be some threats that we need to account for in the strategic plan?
I really think we need a plan that is not so complex that it compromises our fundamental principles, and that. Yeah, it's great to throw everything but the kitchen sink at it, but do we believe in limited government? You know, it's great to try and look out for every unforeseen, you know, pretend we have a crystal ball, but never let the market advance and correct itself
things that are just we see them. We've seen them in history. So I do always want to fall back on the fact that, okay, we want to bring as much in as possible, but not then become so onerous and so regulatory that we're not, sticking to core principles. And that's that's the thing about it is, the voters can decide, yes, we want big regulation and everything under the sun. But those individuals hopefully will have to stick to their principles and state them.
You think is the bigger challenge, there's too many priorities, right? So we're trying to do everything. Or is the bigger challenge is the risks are infinite and we're trying to account for every eventuality, manage all the risks, or some combination of it?
I don't see the difference between, I'm sorry, Charles.
I think it's more of the risk mitigation is we want to try and tell how it's going to get to zero instead of understanding there are a lot of players who are already trying to get it to zero. I'll use luck as a good example. I go into a conversation with luck and I don't have the concerns about risk because I know you all are already managing it 1,000 times better than I can with a finger on top of you saying, don't do this. And so therein lies questions about, is it efficient for us to be micromanaging somebody who's already a good player, who's already doing things the right way? And is that government's role?
What else do you address that we need to
I've got two. I would say this is going to be every year. Not really anything we can plan for, but it needs to be stated. State legislation.
Yes, under mandates.
That's always a threat, and we've got to be nimble, to account for it. But then also communication delays. To Mr. Lyle's point, we spend a lot of time trying to be accurate in our replies back about concerns, and there could be stuff that we didn't even know about that we've got to do some research on. And I think that those delays, like Mr. Lyle said, they lead to people filling in the gaps with what they think might be or what they fear the most, and so on and so forth. So, and I don't know how we mitigate it, but it definitely is a threat.
It was on opportunities, but I think growing too quickly. A threat is we grow too quickly and can't serve the people here today, and we don't serve the people moving here tomorrow. It's back to we can't deliver on the promise. The promise is already made, and the future promise. If you come to Goochland, you will be safe, you will have water, you will have schools that are best in the region. And at some point, class size is so important to the quality of the schools here. And we do have a challenge attracting educators. Most of the teachers are driving past 2 or 3 other schools to get to Goochland, and I think Dr. Bailey's slogan was, "It's worth the drive," when he was superintendent. And at some point, though, with $3.40 a gallon on a good day gasoline, it ain't going to be worth the drive. And so how do we keep our class size 14, 16, 18, where that quality education is achieved? And I don't have an answer for it, but I do see it as a threat. And if we keep adding kids to the school system, I went to the convocation this week. I forget what day. And we got 2,600 kids in the school this year, which is about 150 more than we had last year. And so, well, maybe I'm going to get corrected here. It's more than we had last year. And so at some point, class size is going to increase. And that's where, in my world, the education starts to diminish a little bit. It's that interaction between the student and the teacher. And so if we keep adding people, if we grow too quickly, You know, I've done it in the private sector. I don't want to do it in the public sector.
By the way, I've done work with Peterson schools on and off over the years. I was with Dr. Armstrong's team the week before last. There is something special about the school leadership in this county. There really is. And I can't quite put my finger on it, but it is special and it's unique in its way.
Yeah, well, we upgraded with the superintendent.
Yeah, we should.
Oh, sorry, Dr.
I already
Aaron.
mentioned it.
I do want to add something to what Mr. Christie said on the previous slide. Is we need to highlight, I think you put, sorry if you can go to the previous.
Sure.
You put state legislation. We need to highlight the things that are scary. They're not just state legislation, like unionization, Virginia Clean Economy Act. Very big things so that they're not just this random bucket, that they're very, you talk about a Dominion issue with your rates, go to the Virginia Clean Economy Act and you'll understand why. You talk about issues of school teacher rising costs in schools. We do unionization, it's going to be 20% more. I mean, and then I guess the corollary to that is the threats are those costs can go up way faster than we can adapt if we're not careful. And we've seen it in recent years is the Fed wants to print money like a lunatic, and we look at 9% increases in budgets and get astounded, but how much is that really at the county level? I would argue we're holding the line on budgets and they're going up for all these reasons.
I'll sum it up in a good phrase. Eventually, we're going to run out of change in the couch. It's not going to be there. And considering we haven't done an actual tax increase since 2012, we are kind of scraping the bucket. Or the bottom of the bucket.
You know, something is a challenge. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a threat, but it's something we need to pay attention to, is the relationship between the board and staff. Harmony, whatever, better communication, but always work towards a better relationship. Teamwork, we're all on the same team. We all want to do the best we can for the county. Are they coming for us?
It's not like leaves.
Whatever that was, that's a threat.
Eddie's going to
call the doctor's office, the traffic crash at Patterson, 288, so, 3-car accident.
Thanks, sir.
Sorry.
Anything else on the threat side of the house?
I don't know how to capture this, but I think we have a threat of, if interest rates do drop, if the state comes in and mandates more density, we have 1,000 rooftops that can go vertical tomorrow, and they just sit on the books. These are projects that have been approved for 20 years of agricultural land that has been rezoned and can go vertical. If that all starts and we don't have a plan for what we're approving, that could add to all the things that Mr. Lyle was talking about with the infrastructure.
Compounded.
And if you add, we have rumors of Dominion Energy purchasing large acreage, potentially for solar farms. And, there's a very real potential that the city of Richmond could very much try to change Goochland. And I see them very much as a threat. I do. I don't-
No, I'm saying.
Yeah,
you-
the General Assembly, Richard.
Yeah.
The printout, the printout is gonna look nice.
Oh.
Get on the mayor's bad side.
Yeah, me and Danny are tight.
Have you met him?
Oh, yeah.
Anything, as you guys think about threats, some of these are existential, like if they happen, they happen, and we're going to have to adapt to them. Are there any specific threats that you guys see on the horizon that we potentially need to start taking some action now to get ahead of? We talk a lot about doing long-term planning, we talk about getting in line on the road, we talk about where we need to be investing in infrastructure, and all those are ways of sort of mitigating future risk. Are there any other things we haven't already discussed where we need sort of intentionally planning, to react to some of these threats?
I don't know how to answer that exactly, but the governor vetoed the mandated collective bargaining this year because she wanted to defer it for a year. So by vetoing it, she got what she wanted. So I'm reading the tea leaves that we're going to have mandated collective bargaining. And in casual conversation with some of the school staff, or maybe it was school board members, they're anticipating that's going to be a $2 million administrative cost to us. We aren't going to increase teacher salaries by that amount, but just the amount of staff and administration and whatever comes with mandated collective bargaining. And that's a threat.
Which is about 10% of the budget, right?
It's more money than I think needs it. So that is an immediate, and that is, it hasn't been signed into law. It didn't pass veto proof this last General Assembly, but the governor's amendment that was not accepted was delay it for a year. They didn't, the General Assembly didn't, so then she vetoed it and they didn't override it. So, you connect the dots. And that is a very real, immediate, maybe in the next 2 years threat. And to Mr. Spoonhour's point, $2 million is 2% of our budget, and we get, my world, butt kissed for it. We don't get a thing other than more administration, and that's a threat. That's a threat.
I'll say, I think a threat is not understanding in detail what Northern Virginia does. And I say that, I'll use an example from Florida, as I went, because it's a very similar county, I went to a fire and rescue tour in Florida while I was down there, and they were walking me through things that were new. And they said, yeah, Miami did it. So we knew it was coming in 4 years. And he was talking about shift numbers that blew my mind, that would double budgets. And I compare that to Virginia, and I think, okay, we might feel insulated from what our northern counterparts do, but if history teaches us anything, it gets accepted in one part of the Commonwealth. It might not be next year, but it'll flow to us if we're, and let's not be caught off guard, in that year's budget. Let's be thinking, okay, this is happening, so in 5 years plus, we need to be ready. But I think a lot of those, they are bigger, they have more resources, but, long term, their actions do trickle down.
Tom, could you change the word could to will? And that next, under will raise administrative costs. There's no could, it's going to. Thank you.
I want to bring forward the threat that was identified in that first January meeting, and I think that, I can't remember the group that was orchestrating it, but
Yes.
it was the stool model with our economic revenue, or our commercial revenue. And the threat then was that we basically only had one leg to the stool. And that was, I believe it was Capital One. Now we do potentially have Lilly coming in. So that's really on now 2 legs of the stool. So I think we just don't have enough legs. You know, if we lose one of them, it upends our budget completely, you know, year after year. And on to continue on with that is our debt services fall into that, along with our CIP needs for, you know, the next 50 years. You know, we've got a couple of schools that we have to potentially replace. We've got the courthouse, we've got the fire stations. All of these capital improvements, we've got to be able to cover those. And so, you know, having that, making sure that we have a strong revenue source, you know, or us not having one.
Diversified source.
Right, yeah. Is a threat.
And I think a major threat is to our way of life here in Goochland County. And our desire to maintain a rural and agrarian majority of the area of our county. And I'll give you, for instance, we recently reaffirmed our commitment to and belief in the Second Amendment. Why did we do that? Well, we felt like maybe we needed to. You know, certain legislation was coming down and, you know, put that under threat. So, you know, we want to reiterate our belief and our commitment to that and communicate it so that people coming here will understand that. And perhaps make a decision as to whether they want to, you know, be involved in that sort of thing or not, or you know, because, you know, it's all nice and so forth, but you got to maintain it, and you may have to give up something to maintain that. So I think our way of life is under threat.
Well said.
Hmm?
Well said.
I want to adapt a quote kind of as it applies to Goochland. There's a quote that says, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. But I think as it relates to Goochland, the market can stay irrational longer than we can stay triple, and balanced budgets. Because I don't know that, you know, I don't want to get into conversations. Well, I don't think it's wise to have conversations about solvency because that would be Chicken Little. But I think this board has committed that our triple rating and balanced budgets are non-negotiable. And so I kind of view it as, if we view those as non-negotiable, then we're holding a higher standard, but we have to acknowledge that we can't just build a one-year surplus. We've got to build multi-year surpluses to take into account the irrationality of everything we see around us.
So it's back all the way up. We've been at this for almost 3 hours now. We've covered a lot of ground. So far, and by the way, I'm not going to read them all. And by the way, when I read stuff to you, it's to give you a chance to think and reflect.
Sure does, it's helpful.
The people who process by listening. So we talked a lot about the strengths of the county. And potentially some ways we can leverage those strengths. We talked about weaknesses in the county and really addressing some things that we need to be able to shore up, influence, or strengthen in some way. We've talked about potential opportunities, how can we take advantage of some of these strengths and take action on some of the weaknesses that we've identified. And then finally, we've talked about threats. So what are the realistic things that could degrade our quality of life, or degrade our finances, or make things so inflexible that we can't make choices that really support where Houston wants to go in the future. And so, just as we begin to get a little closer to our wrap up, is I'd love to just hear from each of you. As you sit there and reflect on all this, what are your observations or closing thoughts? So I'll give you a minute to think about that.
And you're asking for it, you may get it. No.
I'll throw this out there only because I don't want it to bite me in the rear end. When I said surpluses, I think maybe what I should have said is multi-year flexibility, because I do think, the surpluses can go back to the taxpayers, but they shouldn't go back to the taxpayers until we have certainty around the revenue streams. And so, that if we weren't giving it back to taxpayers, yes, be building surpluses. If we're giving it back to the taxpayers, then say it's because we've got all these funds coming in.
All right, so what are your thoughts? As you reflect on this conversation that we've had, it might include, if there are any messages that we want really this team to think about as we go through this plan out. We will come back in front of you to get additional input, thoughts, and recommendations. So I want you to think about this not as the end of the conversation, but really the beginning of the conversation. So at this stage of the process, what are your observations, what are your thoughts? What messages do you want to send us loud and clear as we go forward?
Staff comment?
We need to be able to communicate this in very direct and simple terms. And if the underlying document is thorough and detailed, we need to be able to produce something that is succinct and very pointed. And I mean, the principle of a 6,000 page bill is a bad bill. And so what maybe we do have, for legal reasons, the need to have more pages than we would like, but the principles and the intent behind it need to be short, simple, and to the point.
And I hear in that, have a really clear version and have a plan.
Yeah.
Well,
Priorities is important. And if we don't establish, I'll use that word, establish trust with our citizenry, I don't care what plan we come up with, they're not gonna buy in. They won't trust us. So I would hope we would prioritize as what do we need to do first. If we got a fire in the kitchen, let's put that out, and then we'll change the batteries in the smoke detector later. Get the fire out first. Quadrant 1, urgent and important. The other observation is we had a lot more opportunities listed than any of the other categories. So I'm an optimist. I'm always a glass opportunity full person, that we really are blessed, I think, in Goochland to have opportunities to do some pretty good things. But it still comes back to prioritization. If we have, to Charlie's point, something that is so wide-ranging that we can't, full disclosure, I have ADD, I've been counseled, 3 things for business, 3 things for personal every day, or otherwise you're going to have 17 things started and none of them finished. No one wants to buy a house where the plumbing doesn't work. So I would have a fear that we would have staff going in too many different directions, and stick to the fundamentals, make sure your M16 works, you got a full load of ammunition, and then figure about whether or not your name's sewed on your blouse properly. I mean, just priorities. Priorities.
I think we need to be aware of the reputation, of the reputational risk that occurs from certain behavior, such as, would we be looked at as a welcoming to businesses and economic development, or do we reject? You know, and I think how we deal with that would dictate whether people would want to come here. And so I think we always need to be extremely aware of that. I better stop there.
I've got from this, everything is a moving target. There's a trade-off for all of them. Every one of these ups are the things that we can improve on, our threats, our opportunity, all of that. It's all a double-edged sword, and we've got to find the sweet spot, which is difficult, achievable but difficult. And on that, there are just no absolutes. We can't have an absolutely know this, because it takes away our flexibility, creates unintended consequences. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
As I sit here and I listen to all this stuff, I see, wow, there's so much to do. And like when I signed up to do this, like how much of this is what I thought I was getting myself into?
How much is it?
It's wild. But here's the thing. I would bet I could go to 95% of the counties in this Commonwealth, and every single one of them would want to be in my position. We're fiscally the strongest for our size. That's not arguable, that's fact. We're the second fastest growing county. People want to live here. Now we have businesses that are knocking on our doors that we never thought. So the problems we're having, and here's the reality. Our terms are up in 18 months, 17 months. We could be sitting on our laurels and not doing any of this. We could ride it out to the end, but on both boards I've ever been on, we've decided, made the conscious decision to not do the easy wrong thing, but to do the hard right thing. And I'm very glad about that. So while I do see this as, while there's a lot to be done here, it is legitimately because we aren't thinking 18 months ahead. We're thinking 10, 20, 30 years ahead. And while some folks may not agree with the approach, I'm happy to discuss other options. And I'm glad that we are doing this, and we're not a lame duck board, and we are going to do what we think is right.
Awesome. So guys, really appreciate your investment, time and energy on the strategic plan, the beginning of it. Appreciate the public coming out and watching government happen firsthand. It's a part of our culture. And Dr. Rainey, before we close out, any final thoughts that you want to leave the board with, or the rest of us with?
Yeah, there are many. But I'm grateful for this conversation today. And I thank you for your candor and for your awareness of what is on the minds of our residents, our staff, and this community. I thank the community that came to be a part of this conversation today. Thank you. I can only hope that this live stream and its recording is viewed time and time and time again, because you have been very thoughtful, and your approach to your work certainly came through very loud and clear to anyone who will watch this in the future. Clearly, we have a lot of important issues now and in the future. As I sat and listened today, we've done this exercise a couple times with our community and a couple times with with employees. And the things that you have referenced are the same things that our citizens have shared in those settings, and the same things that our employees have shared. And so that's magical in so many ways. And now our task ahead is, okay, now what? So what? What do we do from here? And that's going to be the next critical steps. One of the things when I was hired, I sat with my leadership team and I said, what are some opportunities for us to improve? What are some things that we can do better? And one of the things that resonated in that very first day was, we do not have a collective vision. To use Mr. Spoonhauer's terms today. Now is the opportunity for us to develop that collective vision. What are those priorities? In a world where there are so many different changing dynamics, what are the things that we're going to focus on as an organization and as a community? And this is the chance for us to develop that together with our community, and it's going to set the precedent for the next several years. And so I'm thankful that we're investing this time and energy in doing this. This is a heavy lift, given the hamster wheel that we're all on right now. But at the end of the day, when we look back and have a plan that has fingerprints of the board and staff and our community that can create that vision, that's going to make us so much stronger. So I'm grateful for your conversation. And this, again, is not the end-all, be-all. We will continue this conversation. So, Tom, if you wouldn't mind talking about next steps, just for the benefit of the board and the community, and kind of where we take all of this great work that was done and how we move on from here.
Yeah. So our plan is to land the strategic plan by the beginning of next month. So we'll take the next several months to hear from the public. So we've got a wide variety of sort of public sessions that we're going to begin with, whether it's the planning meeting, commission meetings, or whether it's the actual public events, community engagement team. So we've got a wide variety of opportunities for the public to do. With the Jeremy's leadership team, basically having about on a monthly pace, we come together and take a SWOT, take the data that we're getting, take the feedback that we're getting, and boil it down into key areas where we want to focus, the goals to determine into objectives, actions, projects, et cetera. Then ultimately come up with a long-term plan. Along the way, we've been getting with you guys. Formal settings like this, as well as 2x2.
Bless you again.
To set the stage. So finally coming back to you, hopefully having this. So that's the general game plan that we've got along the way. What I would say is, if you have thoughts, if you have questions, if you have concerns, our hope is to just communicate with you. So I think we already got some feedback about how many emails he's sending out, so we'll probably get even more notes about what we're learning and what we're finding from the public, what progress we've made. I feel like from Interworld and Luck's perspective, if you have questions or thoughts, more than happy to chat or send me emails or anything. We'll come grab me for about coffee and we can chat about this process. I'm sure Jeremy and his team will.
How do we reach you?
You can find me here. Just come knock on the door over there.
Okay.
I'll give you my contact.
All right, everyone, with that, thank you all for coming out, and meeting adjourned.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tom. Good job.
All I did was ask questions.
lot more than that. You made it look like it was just that.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
But I joked.
I don't.
You want to debrief me